Welcome back from KubeCon. I'm John Janchik from Mirantis, and I'm here with Pieter Van Noordennen, who is Senior Director of Growth at Slim.AI. We reported this week on Slim.AI's container intelligence program, and on the report that they've just made available about the security and status of builds on public containers, and I had hoped that Pieter would tell us more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're very excited. So we, for the past year, we have been collecting data on the world's public containers. We follow all of the containers that people scan on our platform, and then all of a set of 165 public containers that represent 33% of the global pull volume on Docker Hub. We think this set is representative of the way developers interact with public containers throughout the world, and we run a series of tools on them. We run our own profiling tools on them that tell us about container composition and metadata and potential attack surface. We run vulnerability scanning tools on them so we understand the vulnerability profiles of those containers, and then we run a NESBOM on them so we understand the packages, libraries, and that kind of thing. And we've been doing this daily for a year to generate this corpus of information that my esteemed colleague Aisha Kaya gave a keynote speech on yesterday at KubeCon, with some really telling and interesting findings. 60% of the public containers from a year ago actually have more vulnerabilities in them today than they did in 2021, yes, when we first did our report. Additionally, we've seen many, many more high and critical vulnerabilities in these public containers. And there's rightfully some debate. Is this because we're more aware? Is this just more noise? Is this something that developers should really be tracking, or should is it the problem of the DevSecOps team? And that's some of the challenges that we're looking into at Slim.AI and what we're highlighting. So along with this container data, as part of our 2022 container report, we ran a survey of 300 developers, DevOps practitioners, and executives and managers with the help of Dimensional Research, amazing research firm. And what we found was actually what's happening is customers are demanding a zero vulnerability world. Up to 70% of the people in our survey said their customers are demanding zero vulnerabilities in their containers. But the average container has 287 vulnerabilities in it, right? So developers are kind of in this middle ground. Executives, 49% of executives believe that their teams are doing something to slim or harden their containers on their way to production, but only 34% of frontline employees said the same thing. So there's this disconnect between what executives think their companies are doing to secure their containers in production.
That's very disturbing.
Yeah, it's challenging, right? I think the silver lining, as Aisha said in the keynote and as we highlighted in the report, is that we've really increased awareness around this problem, and we're really looking to, kind of extend the conversation. There's a lot of really smart, interesting, amazing people who are working on this. But it is a problem, and I think, a year ago, not a lot of people were talking about containers and security. We had vulnerability scanning and stuff like that. But, with things like Log4j and some of the more high-profile supply chain attacks that have happened in the past year, it's on everybody's mind this year at KubeCon, and so it's good to see everybody kind of banding together to try to solve this problem.
And then you have made all of this information available on the public internet.
Yeah, so we've published all this data, and we continue to run it daily. So if you go to Slim.AI and on the homepage there, you'll find, we call it container intelligence. So for these 165 public containers, we make the analysis, the profiles that we've generated, publicly available, so people can come in and see that. If they click into our platform, and it's free, requires a login, then they can get additional information, more robust reporting, additional vulnerability information, additional attack surface information in sort of our core product. And then they can try the optimization capabilities that we have on our platform to slim and reduce containers. And when you do that, you actually remove a lot of the vulnerabilities from them. Because you're removing unneeded components of the containers that you probably aren't even using in productions.
Huh.
Yeah.
So people have numerous things that they can do in a practical sense, and do so sort of immediately and affordably to reduce their attack surface. Just getting back to the original proposition, though, if you're actually seeing migration towards worse states in some of these extremely popular containers, the worst case analysis is that, I mean, and it's not hard to imagine in technology, that bad actors exist who are very deliberately doing this and doing it as smartly as we're trying to defend ourselves.
Right.
Are looking for things that are really popular and, stuffing bad things into them so that we shoot ourselves in the foot with it.
Yeah, well, I mean, often, the vulnerabilities are the result of, kind of corner cases and complex, kind of attack vectors and exploits. I think if you read the government's CISA's analysis of Log4j, and I think they estimated something on the order of 3,000 hours that were spent, kind of figuring out Log4j. But the one thing they said was that, SBOMs, which are kind of the most basic thing that companies can do to ensure their software supply chain security is good. SBOMs and then the level of communication and sharing actually really made Log4j a lot less worse than it could have been. So the response was actually quite good from the community, mostly because we were sharing, people were kind of communicating about what went wrong. So that was why we said, okay, well, whatever container data that we're putting together for this report, we really should make it public and make it available on the internet and just try to do that on a daily basis. And we're going to continue to add more. We're going to expand the number of containers that we show. We're going to start reporting on different tags. Right now we're only reporting on the latest tag, but obviously a lot of people use things like Alpine or Slim, or they might be using different, exactly. Yep. So we'll start expanding our data set there. And all of these are available, any public container or any private container. Even if you log into the Slim platform, you can run our same suite of analysis tools on those containers. Just for private containers and sort of any that are outside the 165, you need to be logged in to do that. So
Now, it seems like there is no redundancy at all between what you guys are doing and use of your commercial tool and someone else's, for example, implementation of auto scanning on containers with CVE auto scanning on containers prior to signature and promotion to production.
Sure.
Use.
Yeah. So and to be clear,
the more scans, the better. It sort of sounds like.
Absolutely, that's our take on it. And I think like companies that produce containers are getting a lot of sort of this happening, right? Where there's a bunch of different vulnerability scanners out there, and they. So they're getting reports from different areas, and every scanner doesn't report things the same way. So we're hoping that by giving developers a good starting point so they can understand, it makes that sort of final scan on the way to production, it makes that a lot easier. And it's more about focus, right? So if you have a container with 287 on average, or up to 900, 1,000 vulnerabilities in it, it's sort of an intractable problem for a developer to solve, right? If you have 2 or 3 critical vulnerabilities and, maybe 30 or 40 overall, you can go through one by one and patch those and kind of do what you need to do to those. So I think reducing some of the noise is what a lot of people in the space have been talking about, and I think that's really like a good thing to do, is really help developers focus on shipping just what they need to production, and then making sure that's as secure as possible.
Let me ask you a wild technology question.
I love it.
For technology that you're probably using yet.
Okay.
What do you think about unikernels as the next generation of ways of making this problem better?
Interesting. Yeah, so I wish I could speak with any kind of authoritative voice on unikernels. I guess the one thing that I can't, I think the one thing I can say is that there's a lot of innovation happening in the kind of container space right now, and I think it's getting really interesting. We have our approach at Slim that was from our Docker Slim open source project that created in 2016 has gotten really popular. But there's a lot of really interesting things happening on the market right now. ChainGuard with their Wolfie images. Acorn has a new kind of approach to building secure containers. Unikernels are really interesting. Even WASM with Docker's announcement of WASM. So, and that space is so new. It's so early to talk about. But so I think there's a lot of interesting innovation in the container space where I don't think, that's been the case. At least last year when we came to DockerCon, to KubeCon, people were talking a lot about Kubernetes and sort of container security inside the pods, but not a lot of people were talking about kind of container build and that the create and build phase of the container lifecycle. So
well, it's good to see.
Absolutely.
And it's good to see the preponderance of sophisticated approaches at different angles to security.
Yeah.
A lot of it seems non-redundant with everything else. Like people can get in there and implement 5 or 6 of these technologies to their global benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like there's, our CEO is fond of saying there's a lot of corn to shuck and not a lot of people to shuck it, So like there's a lot of work to be done here, and I think it'll depend on the developer, whatever makes the developer's life easier to do this and make their containers more secure, to make their supply chains more secure, like that's going to be the win. And, I think that's what we were talking about in the container report about this awareness. It feels very doom and gloom. When you look at some of the numbers and that 60% and the average number of vulnerabilities and the high-end criticals and what happened with Log4j, but awareness is the first thing, like I just said yesterday, the vulnerabilities aren't the problem, the ignorance of them is, and so, the more we can shed light on it, the better off we're all going to be as an industry.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
That you folks have a wonderful rest of the show. This was exciting, and I hope we'll talk again soon.
Yeah, I appreciate being on. Thank you, John.